Sam, would you like to follow?
Sure. Nice to, yeah, as I said, nice to virtually meet a number of you. I don't think I've had an opportunity to meet any of you yet. So, my name's Sam Taylor. I'm the Climate Emergency Project Manager at Basingstoke and Deane Borough Council, which is a bit of a mouthful and a bit of a overly grandiose title. I joined the authority in January. So, as you're probably all aware, we declared a climate emergency last year. I guess profited from that declaration. My role was created, so working alongside Lucy, I guess coordinating a lot of our activities we're doing to tackle the declared climate emergency, both as a council, reducing our own emissions, and then across the wider borough. So yeah, looking forward to sharing what we've been up to in due course.
Thank you, Sam. Richard, would you like to tell us what you're up to, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm Richard Startin. I'm a councillor on Oakley Parish Council. I've been a councillor for about 3 years. My main responsibilities and the working parties is under finance and dare I say the burial committee, but Linda asked me if I would step in because our normal representative for Green Week is Barbara, who is the parish clerk, who's away on holiday, and Andrula, who also sits, I think, and helps with organise the Green Week, is unwell. So I've stepped in a little bit at the last moment, but hopefully I can offer a few words of what we're doing in the parish.
Thank you, Richard. Shall we go to our other Richard Carrow, please?
Hi, I'm chairman of Berkeley Parish Council, and we're interested in this sort of stuff, and I've attended the meetings that have been run before, and good to see some familiar faces, including you, Alan.
Hi.
Thank you. So over to Alan then.
Thank you. I'm Alan Fox, chairman of Ashmansworth Parish Council. Our parish is very small. We're one of the smallest parish councils in the borough, and but we're also the highest at nearly 800 feet up. We are in the main village, a conservation area, and so we are quite isolated, and we have therefore very different concerns from, say, Basingstoke town. And it's very easy for us to get or to feel neglected because our issues are quite different. We don't get main gas. We get intermittent electricity supply. We've had to get our own broadband to work at all, although having done that independently, BT then came along and offered us something. I am particularly concerned about climate change, the danger of, if we all go electric, that the electricity supply will crash totally on us, because the cables don't seem to be that resilient at the moment. I suspect the substation isn't enough. And we, I suspect, are typical of hundreds of thousands of small villages throughout the country. So it's not just something unique to us. I would be very interested to see some real progress on this. A couple of years ago, I had to replace my oil-fired boiler, and the only thing I could find to replace it with was a more efficient, more modern oil-fired boiler. And it doesn't really seem the right thing to do. And I think everybody else is going to be faced with the same issue in the coming years. So I would like to see some major action in that area. Thank you.
Right. We might be looking at Lucy's direction for any help or support you can give in that area or advice. Before we go to that side of it, Tony, would you like to
yes.
tell us what you're
I'm a Tadley town councillor, and last year we formed a group called Tadley Environmental Group, which is a partnership between Tadley town councillors and the population of Tadley. And what we're looking at is anything to do with climate change and the environment. So we're looking at pushing for electric cars to cut down on the pollution that we have. And we're looking at cycling and walking to make it easier for people within the borough and outside for that matter to be able to move around Tadley, and whether that be by walking or cycling and things like that. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Maybe we could have some more detail later.
Yes.
Thank you. I just thought I'd quote to you a definition of sustainability that I found, Lucy, in a document referring to Basingstoke transition plans. And it says, sustainability means balancing the pressing needs of human communities against the equally pressing need to care for the environment. It means managing resources in such a way as to ensure they are equitably distributed now and for future generations. And, you know, it's quite interesting that lots of those words and areas of discussion came up in a panel discussion we had on Monday between 4 panelists who came from different walks of business, from BP, from Energy Saving Cooperative, somebody from Natural England, and somebody who came from Russia as a trained speaker, linked with the Christianity movement on saving the creation. So it's all very meaningful to sustainability, and that's where we are all working together. I'm sure everybody agrees with that in trying to improve it. So if we'd like to go round again, saying how you think that you're helping. I mean, Alan was talking about his problems and issues, and if anybody along the line can offer any help, that might be Lucy or Sam. And Tony, you've gone quite a long way forward, haven't you, with what you're trying to achieve in Tadley. So Richard, would you like to come in? Richard Carrow, and explain what you're doing in your area to help sustainability within the community.
Yeah, thank you. Very little at the moment. It has to be said, we have a number of issues which we're wrestling with, mostly planning. We're involved with 4 appeals, which has taken up quite a lot of time. The other 2 planning issues, and I'm going to expand on one in a minute, are the government's white paper and second paper on planning for the future. And the second aspect of that is the local plan review. I'd like to dwell on the local plan review just for a moment and actually address this comment to Sam and to see what you think. Sam, I've read the recent set of documents that have been sent to us by planning policy in Basingstoke, and while the initial set of documents all look perfectly logical and sensible, without going into too much detail at this point, one disappointing element is lack of focus or ambition, I would put it, lack of ambition in respect of exactly what Alan was talking about, which is renewable power generation or even power generation. And I don't see much mention of any ambition or to do more in respect of, say, solar or wind power or whatever for the borough in the local plan going forward. That, I fear, unless picked up and hopefully corrected, might be a missed opportunity. And I don't know whether you've had any input into it or what your thoughts are on it.
Sure, yeah, happy to pick that up. I might go and segue into what I've been up to as well, what we've been working on. I hope you don't mind, Linda, if I hog the limelight there for a moment as well, because that kind of segues nicely. So I think my initial reaction would be, I'm definitely happy to feed that back to the planning policy team, and I guess, as I'm sure you're going to do, would encourage everyone to respond to the issues and options consultations that's out there. This is the first opportunity of several, obviously, to respond to the local plan update. It is a relatively long process. I'm not a planner, but sit alongside those guys, so have been involved. I would say there is definitely appetite among the team to go out and consider whether that's I guess an old study was done basically on renewable energy potential within the borough. I think there is appetite and desire to update that. Kind of budget constraints and timings, etc., all part of that picture, and how that fits alongside what is already happening. Potentially as well, the local plan and the overlap with neighbourhood plans, and how the neighbourhood planning process can bring forward opportunities for renewable energy generation will be considered as well. So my view definitely is, we would be we want to see more, and we want to make sure that we in the borough play our part as part of the kind of national piece on renewables. I guess that potentially segues a little bit into, I guess, one of the big updates that I'd like to talk to people about, which is we've been working on an updated climate change and air quality strategy, particularly in light of the declarations made last year. That is going to be out for consultation on Monday. So we went to committee, so you can kind of dig around and find a version on our website, but it's always a bit tricky sometimes with the agendas for committee meetings. But my intention was that as of Monday, once that properly goes live, to email that to the distribution lists of all the clerks. So hopefully that filters through to everyone, and I would really appreciate views on that. Essentially, that's, as all strategies are, it's a framework for action. It's not necessarily got all the precise detail, but it sets, I guess, the areas that we want to tackle as a borough council. I guess there's a bit of a bridge between what's going on nationally and what you guys are doing on the ground in many ways as well. We've got kind of 6 main categories. Happy to go through those briefly, but essentially kind of action by all. How do we encourage, how do we empower and educate people to take action themselves? I think there's a real awareness that, to reach 2050, let alone our target of a carbon neutral borough by 2030, is going to require some pretty fundamental and wholesale changes that actually people might not feel they know how to make, empowered to make. Maybe those options aren't available, as Alan said, with oil already. Another area is buildings. How do we tackle emissions of buildings? Transport, zero carbon electricity, and that's, I guess, Richard, coming to your point, how do we make sure we're encouraging both big and small renewable generation to happen? Then kind of waste and consumption, the idea of how do we move towards a bit more of a circular economy, ultimately, reducing what we use, reusing it, and recycling. And then the natural environment and the role that plays both in kind of reducing climate change, potentially through carbon absorption, sequestration, whatever you want to call it, but also its role in adaptation, so reducing the impacts of climate change that we know is going to happen inevitably. So that's going to be out from Monday, with a kind of survey alongside that, which is hopefully there to capture quite kind of quick views, but also very happy to hear more detailed views, or be contacted by that by anyone to discuss that. We'll circulate it through the clerks. We'll try and circulate that through the Association of Town and Parish Councils as well, and Councillor Mahoney is part of that. That's probably a main update, and I think alongside that, Richard, I'd say that we've got a strategy which will take us through to 2030 is the aim. Alongside that, we'll have an action plan, and that's going to be the thing that's a bit more detailed, setting out what we're going to do, and that's going to be a bit more a living document, very open to ideas and suggestions for that as well. What we can be delivering. or plans we could maybe develop there. That's going to be updated pretty regularly because everything's going to change. We'll update on progress there. Within that, conversations with people like the distribution network operators, working out how what scope there is for renewable energy generation in here in the borough will be part of that. And then one other thing, sorry, me monologuing for a while, so apologies. I can pause some questions in a second. I know Tony just had his hand up, but Hampshire County Council will also engage. We're engaging with them quite a lot, and they have recently launched a couple of projects themselves. One of which is you might all be aware of as well, but they've partnered with Community Energy South. And I'm not sure how familiar people are with that organisation or Community Energy as a concept. That's they call that kind of Pathways Partnership Programme, I think, from memory. But Community Energy South, a network of community energy organisations across the south of England, they are looking to support community energy in Hampshire. They have sent a questionnaire around to all town and parish councils. So in theory, you should all have received that. If you're not aware that you have, worth chasing someone. The deadline, I think, in theory, is the end of this week. I think they're willing to be a little bit flexible with that if you haven't got a chance to do that this week, but certainly as soon as possible. And they're hoping to run things like master classes to help communities set up community energy organisations or develop small scale community energy within their own areas. So, and that's something we as a borough council would like to see where appropriate as well.
May I stop you there, Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. I can see Tony's got that.
But Tony was anxious to ask a question.
Yes, thank you. The question I was going to ask is, were you talking to Hampshire County Council? You've actually answered that part of it. And I understand that Mike Culver, the Climate Change Delivery Manager for Hampshire County Council, they've been discussing a climate change strategy, which was out for consultation. That is now finished. But from that consultation, they are working on an action plan, and there will be several actions arising. So presumably you're working closely with them to see what actions they're doing to make sure that we're not reinventing the wheel and duplicating efforts that's happening elsewhere.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and particularly in a place like Basingstoke and Deane, where we have that delineation between county council and their responsibilities, particularly around highways and education, then us as a borough council, there are areas where the kind of the overlap is much greater. I think my understanding is Hampshire have been quite clear that they are a convener and coordinator rather than a doer generally with these things, which is fine, and that's very useful. But yeah, certainly we're in conversation. In fact, the reason all this is so fresh is we had a meeting with all climate change related officers within the county yesterday, and they've got a number of other projects I'd be happy to update on, which would encourage you guys to be sharing amongst your towns and parishes as well in due course. But yeah, and not just within the borough, I think as well. Within the county, I think we can learn a lot from what other people are doing nationwide. And places, West Berkshire, for example, just over the border. We're not kind of restraining ourselves to the Hampshire borders, where we can see collaboration being fruitful. Then certainly we'd be keen to make the most of that. But I also echo, this is quite, it's a draft for comment, and it's early stages. Happy to admit we haven't got all the answers. There's some really meaty issues that very people much cleverer than I are wrestling with in terms of how we're going to deliver some of these things in practice. So,
may I ask, Sam? You were mentioning something that was received by the parish councils, if I understood it correctly, to apply to attend some training class related to a community type of renewables. Is that correct? Did I understand it correctly?
Yeah, pretty much.
A week to apply.
So I don't know exactly when it was originally sent out, but yes, it was via. It should have been from Hampshire County Council, and that's right. It's sent to all parish town councils and other community energy groups that already exist, potentially as spin-offs, and that's looking to it was this kind of Survey Monkey questionnaire, quite short, gauge interest and experience from organisations already. As a result of that, they'll be planning some more support off the back of that, is my understanding.
Right. Okay.
That was
I'll ask Richard later whether he had sight of something like that.
yeah, Sam Culver from I think it was HCC sent it out on the 14th September, and Mike Culver is from Hants.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And he included in that, it went to parish clerks, and he included that as Survey Monkey survey, which had to be completed by the 28th of September. I'm fairly certain I did it, having had a copy of it again. But that's what you were talking about, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. And if people have missed that and haven't responded, I would say just respond anyway. Having talked to the guys at Community Energy South, they are, they sent across all Hampshire, I think, 300 odd organisations, but they're still kind of keen to hear, even if that it's a bit of a soft deadline, I think, rather than a really hard and fast deadline.
Okay. Right. Thank you for that. Okay. Lucy, would you like to contribute updates at the moment?
Yes. Yes, so working with communities, and it's a shame that Alison's not here because she had some slides that she wanted to share and to talk about what they've been doing in Overton, because they've actually achieved a huge amount in less than a year. But part of what she's doing for us is they're putting together a toolkit which takes you through the stages from engaging your parish council, which a lot of you already done because you're parish councillors, to how they've done it, the challenges, the barriers. That will be ready by the end of the year to share with everybody. I will also add other case studies, like Newnham have just put solar panels on their village hall. Herriard are carrying out a greening campaign. So I want to gather more case studies like that. So if you have a project that was particularly successful, I'd be happy to hear. And then we can have a whole useful package to send out to all the boroughs. But interesting, going back to what Alan was saying about the off-gas areas, there's such a lot, many off-gas areas in Basingstoke, and it would be really good to be able to do something there to help. I'm not sure whether you're aware of the government, the Green Homes Grant Voucher Scheme, because that's got a number of measures. Primary measures, which is what you would have to apply for first, is either insulation, but it's also egg source heat pumps, I believe. Sam, can you correct me? I can't remember exactly what the first measures were.
That's right. Low carbon heating, including air source, ground source heat pumps, and solar thermal heating as well.
So that could be something really useful if you're in the off-gas areas. I am going to send round, either by the end of this week or early next week, some information about that scheme to all the parish councils, and also about an eco scheme that we have set up and are working on locally, which also can apply to people who've got a chronic health condition which is exacerbated by living in cold houses. So I'd like to get in touch with doctors' surgeries, health visitors. They could be referred. That's mainly for insulation at the moment, the installers who are working with us. But I plan to put together that information and send it round to you all. We'll also include what Sam was saying about the community energy, and also there's a Hampshire-wide consortium that's being set up for solar panel purchasing, so we'll put information about that. So you've got a useful start. I mean, there's a lot of help for people to improve the energy efficiency of their homes at the moment, more so than I've come across before in the years I've been doing this job. The challenge is to get the message out to people who might not be reading the paper, might not be looking at our website. They might be, a lot of them are for low income people or people with ill health who won't be being proactive because they're struggling just to cope with their daily lives. So spreading that message through the to the parishes, to go into your parish newsletters or in whatever way you disseminate information. So that has been the main amount of my work, and getting these grant schemes set up. And yeah, the next big thing will be having a toolkit by the end of the year for you.
Right, that sounds brilliant. And
the only very small, sorry, very small thing I'd add to that as well, in terms of, and this is another, again, a Hampshire County Council funded scheme, but they're asking for us to promote as well, is that the Environment Centre. I don't know if people have come across them or heard of them. They're based locally. They have a helpline already for people, but it's been kind of focused on things like fuel poverty and energy efficiency. That scope's expanding, so they have a helpline, but also lots of information on their website. We'll circulate that again next week or the end of this week with this bunch of information, useful for people here, but also to circulate again to help people understand what options might be available to them to improve their house, make it warmer, greener, cheaper to run. Alan, that does include potentially options about heating. Older houses in off-gas grid places are a challenge, but they can explain the suitability of different technologies as well. So,
okay, there's been some warnings about all these grants and help towards insulation and heating, hasn't there? Whereby there've been the cowboys and the scammers around. That's been on the news recently. So how can you protect the community in order to not be taken in by these people who are just trying to act fraudulently in order to offer their services, because they say that, it will be paid for by the government or a grant will be given. In actual fact, they are just feathering their own nests. Is there any
I think general rule, if you are phoned up or approached or someone knocks on your door, do not engage with them, because a bona fide company would not just phone you randomly. I mean, we've all probably had scam calls, it's like, and you think, why have they phoned me up? I mean, they're just fishing for business, and particularly if they turn up on the door, particularly if they say they're working with the council. That would be something we'd be really interested to hear about, because I will report them to the trading standards. But yes, for possibly the older residents, it's getting that advice out is really helpful. The government scheme, people are not going to be contacted about that. You have to apply yourself. So if anybody phones up and says, give us your bank account, we'll give you some money in there from the government scheme, to be wrong.
To be eligible for the new Green Home grant scheme, the installer must be accredited under a number of schemes. So Trustmark, which is an industry standard. Renewables have other schemes that are similar. There's something called the MCS scheme, Microgeneration Certification Scheme. There's also something called the REC, the Renewable Energy Code of Conduct, I believe it stands for. I mean, as ever, even organisations, you can't legislate for rogue traders or people, and I think there's always an element of vigilance required. I think the good thing about these schemes is they're big enough that you can cross reference with people with reviews and things. I unfortunately, we as a council obviously can't be responsible for installations under some of these government schemes, but we are happy to advise.
You could give a warning in your package, though, couldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we can caveat to be aware. I think I guess as Lucy said, through the eco scheme, you can check if you want to. You can check who has who has given us the required information to be delivering measures under that, and we can verify whether that there are only a handful of installers that are kind of set up to do that in the Basingstoke and Deane borough. that's really the only thing that's kind of pseudo affiliated with us. The Green Home Grant is obviously a national government thing. We're very happy to point people in the right direction. There's some useful website tools out there, but yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Richard Carroll, you would like to come back?
Yes, thanks for that, and thanks for mentioning the Green Home Grant Scheme. I was on the phone first thing this morning because we have a flat roof we need to put insulation in because there's no insulation between that and the room below it. I've got on my browser 5 tabs for various trust mark firms. I have 2 observations with this. One is that it's really difficult to get hold of them. I think because they are being inundated by calls even at this early stage. So I am wondering how they are going to be able to provide the services that will be in demand, and I think there'll be a lot of people wanting to take up on this. And the second thing, Sam, something that you might be conscious of, is that the completion date for the scheme is, I believe, March 2021. Well, that's an extraordinarily short flash to bang time to go through the process of getting grants. Oh, sorry, forgive me. Finding a supplier, getting them to quote, getting the grants, and then arranging time for a supplier to actually deliver the job by the end of March 2021. I don't know who came up with that timetable, but it sounds pretty crazy to me.
I agree, and as someone who's also tried to make some inquiries myself about the scheme, and yeah, we're extraordinarily busy. Please drop us an email or whatever. So, I mean, I guess I can't comment precisely because these are government schemes. My understanding that this is not the only kind of pot of money targeted this way. The part of the government's reasoning behind this, which is really good, is the kind of job creation or and the economic recovery side as well, given the kind of extraordinary downturn we've faced previously and the effect that COVID's having. And there's been a number of pots of money that have come with deliver this yesterday timeframes. It is really challenging. I guess all we can say is I can really only speak personally, and is just worth giving it a go. My gut, and this is purely me saying rather than anything official, is people are lobbying that this is not just a flash in the pan, because no business can create jobs on a one-off bit of money. Everyone wants a kind of this to be the beginning of something a bit more established. And if that, if the government intention is both from a national policy point of view to decarbonise, to improve energy efficiency of housing stock, whilst also create a pipeline of jobs, then you can't just have here's one grant scheme and that's it. And I know that's definitely what the kind of industry is lobbying for. So yeah, I'm hopeful that this isn't just a flash in the pan and that it leads to something more. But you're right. Unfortunately, this particular scheme is a bit of a it's a bit of a no-brainer in many ways for some people. So it's likely to be very busy. And yeah, we just I'm the same as you. Hopefully, I can get hold of someone and get some quotes, and we'll see. I think long term, I guess we as a council would like to continue to consider what else we can do to support housing retrofit, both working with housing associations and social housing, but also privately owned rented properties. I think it's quite a challenge. We too are considering how do we make the most of the opportunity as well as the challenge that we're facing at the moment. There is clearly opportunity for clean growth, to coin a kind of phrase that's banded around. We're working quite closely with our economic development team, who've also just put together a kind of economic recovery framework, considering what kind of schemes could we have that potentially deal with unemployment, particularly youth. Youth have been particularly affected potential training schemes that not only create a pipeline of work, of highly skilled jobs, but also deal with things like housing and improving that. It all sounds great in theory, and it's ideal, but it's challenging, I guess, to pull all the pieces together. But something we're looking at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Tony, to what you've heard so far and what you have been facing in Tadley?
Yes. What I would say is that Sam referred to it earlier about all the organisations. There's the government, there's the Hampshire County Council, there's Basingstoke District, there's local councils. There are also a lot of organisations, an awful lot of people doing an awful lot of work. And the challenge really is trying to sift the information that's coming to us, to try and make some sense of it, and then disseminate that information to our residents to help them to move forward on environmental issues. And certainly as far as energy is concerned, there's an awful lot that they can do. And I think one of our roles is to try and help them do that. For instance, LED lighting, we can help, first of all, inform some of our elderly maybe who may not be too au fait with that, to tell them about the benefits of having it, and even then getting involved in helping them to get it installed. There's all sorts of different things we can do. Sometimes we don't know where to start.
Yes. I think Oakley would be faced with that same situation. Do you agree, Richard?
Yes, I mean, I think we are a little way behind on these some of these sort of more strategic issues that I've been hearing from the people on this call. I mean, I just prepared just a few notes on what we have been doing on a much more local level in terms of sort of green issues. I mean, I can go through those quickly. I mean, our main project moving forward is those of you who perhaps know Oakley, we have a central feature of the village is our village pond, and we have now got funding to completely refurbish that pond, and which we hope to do in next year. And this is a complete in terms of refurbishing it and relining and replanting it, which not only obviously has into a sustainable array of plants rather than the overgrown and invasive plants that are surrounding it at the moment. It will be a major feature of the village, and obviously from a green point of view, that is a good step forward for us, having got the finance for it now. I mean, we also do a number of other issues on a much more sort of a day-to-day basis. I mean, we issue welcome packs to all new residents in the village. That includes all details of all clubs, organisations and facilities within the village, which includes the organisations like the Oakley Woodland Group and Jubilee Oaks, which you may know as a pathway and cycle track that was constructed a few years ago now between Oakley and Kempshott, and they maintain that to allow people to be able to walk through as a nice walk and all the way through from Oakley to Kempshott. We have an environment working party on the parish council, which they're responsible for the usual things like the overseeing the notice board, litter bins, allotments, planting bulbs. We also run a school competition once a year based on green issues for the local infant school and junior school, which is a way of encouraging the younger people to be aware of their environment and come up with ideas, and that's something we do on an annual basis. On the Highways and Transport Working Party, we have a community speed watch. Speeding is a particular issue in the going through the village, and indeed the roads, the B3400 and Pack Lane, which go round the village. And again, we're trying to use that to encourage local residents and indeed those that are just passing through from Overton, Whitchurch, etc., to stick to the speed limits, because this is a bit of an issue we have in and around the village. And we also use that information. Planning, I heard Richard Burry mention they've got planning issues. We have, like a lot of parish councils, have planning issues where they want to put more houses which are outside, I should say, of the neighbourhood plan. And we're using that information to, shall we say, fight some of the planning applications that we currently have are being reviewed by the borough council. We have sports ground and play areas working party. They're responsible obviously for all the sports grounds, pavilions and play areas, keeping them in good condition, the facilities for all the local sports teams. And we have a recycling centre at Beach Park, which has its issues of its own, to be quite honest, where people from outside the village are using it as a bit of a dumping ground, and we have a fairly constant liaison with the borough about how we can control that area, because it's it's not, all sorts of things are being dumped there which are not really recyclable. But so we have a good communication with the borough on that, and that is a little bit better than it was, so we say, over the last 2 or 3 months. So that is just in a nutshell really where we are on the day-to-day issues in Oakley. Obviously we're supporting the Green Week, which is being organised in conjunction with the church. We have our parish clerk who's on the committee, and indeed, as I said earlier, a couple of other members of the parish council working with Linda and the church on what is hopefully going to be an annual event.
Thank you, Richard. Barbara, who's in our audience but would like to ask a question.
Yes, I've had a discussion about the housing and reducing energy, which is absolutely great. A big thing for our household, which should appreciate a lot more support, I think, on all levels, is the ability to recycle more effectively. Too much of our rubbish is going to the it's that big place at Chinham, I can't remember the name of it. Our grey bin we hardly use, but that is such a tiny step because it then goes into burning. It sort of makes us feel better because we're not using landfill. We use composting where we can, the paper where we can, the bottling where we can. But I think if in Oakley we could have more effective recycling, and I can understand what you're saying, Richard, about Beach Park, but if it was more accessible and a wider range of things we could recycle, I, as a sort of green citizen, would feel a lot more supported. And it'd be nice if it was all joined up and replicated around all the communities. Is there anything on a strategy and effectiveness that would help? So I mentioned, you, Sam, said one of your 6 ones was waste and recycling consumption. Maybe there could be a little bit of attention on that, or time spent on that. We're not wanting to dominate the meeting, but just to understand a bit more what's happening there.
So
Yeah.
I
Sorry,
think.
Linda.
Oh, sorry. Carry on, Richard.
No, well, no, after you. You go first. You're probably a bit closer to it than I am.
Well, I was just going to add that you're very dependent on the borough. And so I was going to divert it to Lucy or Sam. You know, are you involved with that side of it? And is there any support that you can give in that direction?
So we don't get involved with waste and recycling, which on the one hand is quite a good thing, but also quite frustrating because we can see where people want it improved. I mean, I'm in East Hampshire district and I'd like to see things different. I don't know. I mean, we have contact with the waste and recycling officers. Have you contacted them at all and taken this up and asked what's going on? Because I do appreciate, whilst we're dealing with just climate change and energy and carbon emissions, when you're looking at your whole village, you want to improve the waste and recycling as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the recycling centre at Wade Road is excellent. My husband uses it as much as he can, and the way it's then sort of broken down even more segregation, it looks very encouraging. But this is the question I took to the parish council after our first Green Week. You know, could we do more on recycling? And I don't see it, you know, I can hear the energy discussions and the environment, which I'm passionate about, but recycling, you know, on the big debate, it was just said that, I don't know whether it's Basingstoke or Hampshire, whoever was represented, I get muddled between the two, just said that, you know, we are the highest energy consumers and the worst recycling. And if other people can do better, surely we can. And, you know, one of the things is the more we wrote to it, you know, the subject was on the email about dog poo, everyone would dog poo, but if it was all about recycling. So, you know, maybe as residents, we need to send more emails, but I'd like to see more change in a better direction to be able to recycle more effectively.
I mean, yeah, I guess I can chip in and say, I encourage you to reach out. If you don't have a contact, happy to share, or I guess we can forward on any particular requests. I guess the challenge I'd have, and I'm not a waste expert necessarily at all, I think the challenges are a lot of recycling depends on a market for those goods, and I think where Hampshire, it seems hard to recycle some things. So I guess we as a borough are the waste collection authority, whereas Hampshire County Council are ultimately the waste disposal authority. And there is a context, I guess, of a government due to produce a resources and waste strategy, which will set new frameworks and rules for borough and waste disposal. So there is a kind of context of a bit of change coming. We, I think, would love to ultimately have this reduce, reuse, recycle hierarchy. Recycling is vital, but I guess ultimately much better to use less and reuse stuff where we can. You know, as consumers, and sometimes it feels like we're hamstrung, but in some ways we have a real, you know, on our own, but actually have a real powerful voice in you know, collectively in terms of lobbying, you know, the people that we're buying from to do stuff better. But yeah, on the recycling front, Hampshire, there's some stuff we don't recycle very much. I think this is my understanding, because actually there's not a great market from it, and what you see in, you know, see sometimes, I guess it's been in the press or the media sometimes, is actually you get bits of plastic from the UK that ends up in the sea in, you know, other parts of the world. My understanding actually is, although sometimes it seems like we don't recycle as well in Hampshire, part of that is because actually we don't then end up sending waste all the way around the world that isn't recycled here. So there are, I'm almost trying to say, my understanding is that there's almost like a silver lining to it. I'm not trying to kind of fob this off as anything, because I think it would be great for us to enable residents to recycle more and understand how to do that best. But I think there are sometimes challenges with just, you know, councils that look like they recycle everything is not maybe as good as it looks, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I've just made a note If I can just say something.
Yes,
I've just made a note, a question for myself, because this comes up quite a lot. I know with Overton, they get frustrated with their recycling. I'll get in touch with their waste and recycling manager and say, who is the person who can work with us? Because if yes, we want to present a whole package and we can only do the energy and climate change bit. So if I can see if we can get somebody strongly on board from that team, who at the moment are based physically in Hart. Well, they won't even be there at the moment, but they have been based in Hart. They are coming back into the Basingstoke civic offices at some point whenever we all go back, which will make it a lot easier to get us a working relationship built up. But I will find out if I can get somebody fully on board working with the parishes like we are, and we'll let you know.
Yeah, I mean, because now we're, Love Oakley Go Green as organisation, and we've got a persona on Facebook, we can push out information. So it's not just me individually, we could start influencing our whole community, working with the parish council. We have a much larger voice now, because with the Green Week, we're establishing, credibility of what we want to do and the broad range of what needs to be addressed. So that would help.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Lucy. Richard?
I have to go. I've got a meeting, another Zoom in 2 minutes.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you
for the support, and thanks to Sam. Completely agree with what Tony said. That having a go-to guide to say how to do things or who to talk to is really, really important. And I'm in close contact with Overton, and I know that their plan is working. They asked me to help with it. I said I'm not sure I had anything to contribute, but it will be very useful when it comes out. But thanks very much and goodbye.
Bye. Bye. Okay.
Could I jump in there?
Yes, Alan, please do.
Yeah, very interesting discussion. I'm also concerned about recycling. The first point is that we're almost the only parish in the borough that's not allowed to use our local recycling centre, because we're close to the Newbury one, but we're only 10 or 12 miles away from Andover, and they insist that we use that instead of the Newbury one, which I would drive near. Most days I go to Newbury. We've had a long battle on that and lost. So basically, most of us are not sending anything to recycling other than through the green bin. What we are finding with lockdown is that we're having, and as you can see from my picture, I'm a great age, so we've been keeping fairly isolated, and we therefore have been having far less physical shopping in the main supermarkets. And we are having a lot of local suppliers, and most things now come wrapped in plastic, not in plastic, but in boxes, which we recycle. No, we take them back. They're reused. And reusing is always better than recycling. That's whether it's glass or cardboard or paper bags. Paper bags are remarkably good at storing things. So I would like to see some progress on that. I do sympathise with the borough that you can only collect things that can be sold for recycling, otherwise you have to burn them, and it's probably better to burn than to dump them in landfill. What does also concern me is that our hour is nearly up now, and we've touched on a wide range of very important issues. I've had Alison contact me to say that she can't get through. For some reason, the system wouldn't let her on. And she's obviously keen to join us. What I would suggest is that could you possibly send us all on this call each other's contact details if we agree? I don't think there should be a privacy issue. And we could continue by email discussion, because I think there's a lot more detail you can go on to, and you can often write more concisely and reply to things. And I would like to follow along these things. Going back to the energy, we wanted to have solar panels in one of the farms in an area that wasn't seen at all. and planning permission was rejected for that on the grounds that there was a footpath going past. They didn't complain of the fact that the footpath had a style that was so dangerous you couldn't use it. That didn't matter. But the important thing was you had a style. You had a footpath. Elsewhere in the parish, which was outside the conservation area, in land belonging to the Highclere estate, Lord Carnarvon, he got his permission for a solar panel farm. But it's very difficult when you've got thatched buildings. You can't put solar panels onto thatched roofs. So there's a long debate on lots of all these issues, and we're only just scratching the surface today.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you. It's a good point all round. I think we've really benefited by talking to each other today. And Lucy, under normal conditions, she organises regular meetings for us to get together. And maybe, Lucy, this is the beginning of maybe another series of meetings.
Yes, that was one thing I was going to say before we finished. One, to say thank you to Linda for actually getting us all together. I'm assuming, would you like to meet again? Would you like to have these meetings on a regular basis?
Yes. Hands up. Yes.
And how often? When would you like the next meeting to be? Tony?
About a month's time.
In a month's time?
Month's time.
I'd be happy with the month if we can make sure we can communicate by emails to plan and prepare, because otherwise we spend an awful lot of time talking around the issues.
Yes.
And if you've actually got concrete proposals, it would be much easier to have a more efficient meeting. It gets very difficult when you have a lot of people, because obviously only one person can speak at a time.
Yeah.
And I'm very keen that we do make some rapid progress. It's a very important issue.
And going back to what Sam was saying about this document that is going to be released on Monday, you said, didn't you, I believe? And that must be an important document that our parish councils need to absorb and follow up as appropriate. So, yes, email communication between us would be ideal. Tony?
Yeah, I agree with Alan, what he's saying, but I also think we should have some sort of structure to the meeting, a sort of an agenda, a short agenda, with just the main topics which we can discuss and also ensure that nothing that we really want to talk about is missed.
Well, normally Lucy would do that. This was a sort of an offshoot, really, from what Lucy normally does, to integrate it into our Green Week programme, just to get the councils back together again and just sort of voice opinions and then formulate something forward. So I think it's a big thank you to you all for coming and supporting our Green Week, but I think we've hit quite a few challenges that we'd like to develop onwards.
Shall I? Sorry, Linda. Shall I see if I can get somebody from the waste and recycling team to the next meeting?
Yes.
Would that be helpful?
That would be brilliant.
And then Sam and I haven't got to talk to you about something that's not totally our field. Okay, well, we could make that
part of the meeting.
Beginning of an agenda coming here. Okay.
Could I suggest, I'm looking at personal changes. Now that's something for tonight. We've got a Zoom meeting about the ABC of saving the planet, and that's by two ladies who are passionate about putting the personal habits of the recycling and what you use, what you don't use, etc. I'm not really into all the council stuff, but I do feel there is a sort of connection to the general village population, and I am quite happy to ask the awkward question at the councils, etc. Sorry, Richard, but really pushing on to the parish council to sort of perhaps represent the village and what we hear as a green team. I'm also very passionate about the natural environment and have with the Green Week programme, doing things with the Woodland Group, Jubilee Oaks, So I feel that I could contribute, but more as ensuring there is focus across the broad spectrum. I don't know whether there's an appetite for that, but on that basis, I'll be very happy to be part of this, or else I'll sort of let it be more council orientated. I don't know if you think that's of value.
Well, we can discuss that later, Barbara, depending on the agenda that Lucy sets up. But I'm sure your contribution on behalf of Oakley and across all the other parish councils would be very useful.
Well, I think as a sort of private citizen representing many villages,
absolutely,
be of value.
Yes, so I think that would be valued. So can we leave the meeting now that we are putting it back in the hands of Lucy as a leader on how the councils move forward, and I would still like to be involved as eco direction that I'm trying to combine from the church and the community, and hopefully we can go forward. That's the only way we can do it.
Linda, can I just say something? I think it's really, really encouraging that the borough council and the local councils and stuff are looking at the bigger picture. But I do think that you have to look at like the people on the street, and if people are doing their recycling, which I think is why all these conversations come back to recycling, it's the one tiny thing that people think they can do. So if that was improved, people then go, okay, we've nailed recycling, maybe we could get a solar panel, or maybe we could insulate our homes, etc. Whereas I think if the recycling isn't working and people realise that they can't put something in the bin, or we can't have a food caddy or those sort of things, then I think people can't be bothered to start with. I think if you can nail the little things, the bigger things will follow naturally. I mean, I had a week on the Isle of Wight this summer, and they recycle everything. Literally, your black sack has like nothing, like nappies in it. That's the only thing, and so you can see that they're really got people behind the whole green initiative because they've nailed the little things. And I think that's what we've got to do before, while obviously we want sustainable energy and climate emergencies to be off the agenda because they've been sorted, you've got to nail those tiny things that every single person can actually help with.
Well, I can also back that up where my sister lives. It's in Hertfordshire, but it's sort of in close proximity to London, and she's got a bag for this and a bag for that, but she has to separate everything that goes out into her bins, whereas we're not allowed to do that here in Basingstoke unless we do it on an individual basis. But it is a fact, isn't it, if we get the little things right. Is everybody happy to leave the meeting now and to put it in the hands of Lucy, and she will act appropriately, won't you, Lucy? And,
Yep.
I'll email you with each other's email addresses, and then if you want to raise anything via email, copying in everybody, and then we can move forwards from there. Is that agreeable, Lucy? Yes.
Yep, that's good.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Use that as a summary. Thank you again for joining in, and we look forward in a month's time to seeing your faces again, hopefully. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.